Hi, my name is Oriah. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how I got out of that almost killed me. Getting married young, it's an oxymoron because if you're marrying young, first of all, it's hard enough to be married. Second of all, you're young. And we just didn't like being married. I don't think that was our truth at the time. And so we just rebelled against each other. I graduated. I met him. We had kids right away. So at one point, I tried to leave by separation. And then towards the end, I just wanted to separate, and then I wanted to start dating someone else. That was the plan. But when he found out about it, that there was another person that I wanted to date, that was like the end all that was it. He just couldn't handle. So he went after me mentally and emotionally and his family together, and they all banded together to take the kids from me. They thought I was unstable. And I tried to let everybody know, you guys don't understand what this marriage has been like. Let me explain it to you. And by this time, he had already poisoned, is the word I'm going to use because that is accurate. He poisoned my family, poisoned his family, and told everybody this story about me that wasn't accurate. It was a matter of fact, it was the opposite because he was the one that put me in those situations. He was the one that took advantage of my innocence and this kind of religious, innocent mind that I had. And I didn't really know what was happening until it started happening. And then I would rebel against him and then he would get upset. There was a lot of instances of things that happened. He put me in those situations and I was hurt. I was physically hurt and sexually abused. This is where it started to affect me psychologically, where I started to think that I wasn't really valuable and I wasn't going to make it. So the only reason I thought if I leave him and maybe I date or move on, I have a chance of making it. There's a chance I could save myself here. But when he rallied against me with the parents involved, and my parents weren't like that, they were not confrontational. So his parents were confrontational. So they would try to do all sorts of measures to take the children. For example, they would go ahead of me and enroll the children in their school district without my permission. And then on the document say that I abandoned them and that they were the guardians, which there's no actual any proof of this or any facts to this. As a matter of fact, I was working almost 6 days a week so I can be a single mom. And this is after I left. I had to be a single mom and I had to raise these 3 kids. So I had to work to make enough money for an apartment, furniture, clothes, food, gas. And here I'm 24 years old. My parents didn't want me to come back because there wasn't enough room, they said, and they didn't want 3 kids in the house. And my parents were just very conservative and they didn't want to get their hands dirty and they didn't want to get involved. And so it was my bed, I made it, I live it. I had to work a lot. I had long hours. I was in the car business because that was the first place I can make fast money. That was good money and that I can get commissions and I can have a good paycheck. I didn't even have enough money to buy clothes for myself to stand there and sell cars. I had to borrow clothes, but I did it. And then I thought I can just go back and pick up my kids from the house and bring them back to my house. And that's when it started, where they were like, oh, no, they're sleeping. Oh, no, you can't just come in here and get them. And I'm like, I've been working, this is my turn. It's time for me to get my children. And he had moved in with his parents when we split. That's when hell started. And I'm going to try not to cry on this part because this is the hardest. For the next 7 years, I had to fight for my children to see them. And it escalated so out of control that I had to go to court 11 times. I had to fire 4 attorneys. I had to end up representing myself because nobody was fighting at the level I was fighting. Turns out his attorney was friends with the judge, which is not supposed to happen, but I found out years later. So I could never win a case. One time I had the jury actually start applauding after I presented my case with about 20 photo albums with dates and times showing that I never have abandoned my kids, ever. But that was the story they stuck to. In the first 6 or 7 years of going to court, I would be upset and kind of cry and show emotion I thought the judge would show some compassion or leniency or understand the situation I was in. But no, that's not what happened at all. As a matter of fact, they tried to break down my character by saying, you see how she is, she's unstable, she's emotionally unstable. And this is something I see that happens a lot in parental alienation situations where the mother or the father, it can happen to either, or the person being alienated, they're not allowed to show emotion. So if you show that you're damaged or traumatized or hurt by what is happening to you, they will use that against you, that you are unstable for being emotional. Hopefully things have changed since then. This was in the 90s, but back then that's how it was. So during that time, I would try to go get my kids and they wouldn't let me get my kids. I would call the cops all the time. Cops were constantly arriving, trying to show the court order that I'm allowed to see my children. They wouldn't let me get on the phone with them all the time. I was very close to my children. I was raising them like any normal mother would raise their children, was very attached and very close to them. I nursed them all. I was very hands-on, and I couldn't believe a family could do this to me. I just couldn't believe that can actually happen, that people who saw that you were a good mother took care of your children because you're being abused or you're going through an abusive situation. There's no way to say it. You escape from that, and then you try to get your life together to try to live now with children, and you're single. All the fingers are pointing at you that you did something wrong and that you now have to be punished, and now you're not allowed to see your children. It was like my whole world went inside out, upside down, backwards. And I was constantly confused. And this is when I started drinking. So what happened was I was at work one day and I'm constantly crying. And so my coworker said to me, you need a break. You need to come with me after work and we need to go to a bar. Just chill out. So I went with him to the bar and I sat there, fine, okay, whatever, I'll just have like one sip. So I drank that whole glass. And in that moment, I knew I was free from pain. That was the moment I knew that I was going to make it on the planet. Because if I can have that, I don't have to be in this searing pain every single day of my life. I was able to handle everything else. Up until then, I was able to handle all of it. But I couldn't handle being away from my kids. And I couldn't understand how a family could do this to someone. And I couldn't believe that he turned my own family against me. And they believed him over me when I'm their flesh and blood. They know me better than anything. And they know I'm not like that. They all used to say, well, we know how wild you are. Yeah, wild because I stood up for myself. Wild because I spoke my truth. That phrase, wild woman. Okay, fine. Yeah, I'm independent. I'm smart. I'm intelligent. I speak for myself. I stand up for myself. I do what I need to do best for me. So that makes me a wild woman. Why? Because I'm not succumbing to rules and regulations, and I'm not letting people control me and own me. That makes me a wild woman. So I lose respect. People lose respect for me over that. So that's why I started drinking. And I didn't put it down for 13 years. And no one knew I looked just exactly the same way I look right now. And I would stop drinking when I was pregnant. So I got pregnant two more times with next husband. I had 2 more children and I would stop drinking. Became my best friend. Was the reason I survived. Because I tried to commit suicide so many times because I couldn't see my children in pain anymore. I knew their lifestyle wasn't as good as a lifestyle I can give them. I could see the way they were living in a hoarding house. I could see the conditions that they were in. I could see their father wasn't always home. I could see the mental illness of my former mother-in-law. I could see all the things that were happening, and I tried to make a difference. I tried to stop it. I tried to be involved. I tried to get them as many times as I could whenever I could, but it was the times when I wasn't with them. I just stopped caring about myself. That became my conduit to life. It became my access to freedom, to a better life. It was the reason I was able to get all the way up into the last day I took my last drink when I was 36. It kept me alive while it was killing my body. So it was destroying my organs and destroying everything in me, but I got everything out of it. How crazy is that? But that's like a real talking, okay? Because that's actually what happens is your mind starts to really believe that this is the only way you're going to survive and live. And you believe it because you see the results. So I was happier. I didn't feel pain. I made friendships. I had social circles. I was able to travel. I was able to live a semi-decent, normal life, but I wasn't living at all in integrity with myself. So all my decisions were dark. So I lived in the underworld. I worked in LA, in Hollywood. I spent most of my time working there, and I got into Hollywood wanting to become an actress. It just was one wrong left turn after another. I just kept spiraling down, and I would pull it all together when I saw my kids, and I gave them the best version of me. I would take them to museums. I would have fun with them. I would buy them clothes. I always took care of them. I always had clean clothes on and clean car, and everything was always upstanding. My house was always upstanding. Everything was next level. I was drinking it straight, and I didn't need a shot. I needed a glass, and I would fill it like a tumbler. And then I stopped going to bars, and I would just drink out of the bottle, or I would just bring it home. I would always hide it. Then I started in my 30s, I started putting it in Coca-Cola, like 32-ounce cups. Actually, in my late 20s, I started doing that. So I'd have Coke in there, and then And then I would just drink that and sometimes I would take the kids to the park because I was like, I have a Danish background. So I'm like, I can really handle. Not anymore. Obviously, I cannot. I'm allergic completely. My body works. So you couldn't really tell. And everyone was so used to seeing me like that. That became the new norm, my new personality. That's really who I was. It was just that no one knew there was any other version of me because I would start drinking, I would wake up in the morning. I think the earliest I started drinking would be about 8:45 in the morning. I would put it in my coffee. I would just have those little travel sizes. I thought it was funny. I felt like I was getting away with something. I was getting away with murder, basically, because I was drinking and living a full life and nobody knew. I got myself in a lot of really, really dangerous situations during those years, especially in my late 20s. After my dad died, I just spiraled even further down and he died suddenly. I felt like I would just want to go with him. I didn't want to be here anymore. So it was like a wasted life. Like this one was a dud. It all came out wrong. Everything I did was wrong. Couldn't do anything right. There's nothing I can do. Anybody would go, oh, you did a great job. Oh, atta girl. Oh, here's your kids. Oh, here's this. Oh, yes. Good. Everything's good. No, it was the opposite all the time. I started to get used to it. So it just became like, this is my life. This is who I am. I'm a punching bag. I am a favor bag, flesh and bones, just here for other people. I'm here. I'm going to fight for my kids any chance I get, but that's all I have left. It's just them. That's the only reason I'm here. My mom was a 4'11" Honduranian woman. Grew up in the mountains of Santa Barbara, Honduras, on a coffee plantation, never stepped foot in a school. Basically was a villager, was born in the 40s. By the time she got here, she was 32 when she had me. She barely spoke English. And by the 4th grade, I was on my own. I mean, she was maxed out with what she can help me with. There's no internet. You're learning everything the hard way. So I didn't have a mother to go to, and her family's all the same like her in that way. I didn't have that kind of education, and I don't blame them at all. I mean, what can they do? That's just what their life was like. So I occurred to people that I didn't care about anything. I was aloof and on my own, isolated and rebellious, and I was wild. That's the flag everybody painted about me. And it wasn't a good feeling, and it wasn't a good thing. And no one would come to me for support or advice. No one's coming to sit with me to hear what I have to say about anything. It's the opposite. Don't listen to her. And yet here I am inside. I knew I was really smart. And I had really good grades. I come from, on my dad's side of the family, very highly educated people. I was just mislabeled, misinformed, miscalculated. I mean, I didn't want to be a victim, but that's what it felt like at all times. So for me to get out of the victim mentality I always tell people, I'm the girl in the back of the class. If I can make it, anybody can make it. Because I'm not supposed to be here. I could have died many times. I had many situations that were close calls. I've had weapons pulled on me. I've had a lot of situations where I got out of that. It's amazing I'm here to be able to share it. I always knew I had something more to give that I didn't understand how nobody saw it. And I didn't know how to get out of it. It wasn't until I almost died and I was fighting for my life for 5 days in bed where I made an agreement with God to give me another chance. So I was 36 years old. I had gotten married again after the first husband. And that marriage was just a convenience marriage. And I thought it was going to be more, but he just could not be faithful no matter what. So I just divorced him immediately. So I wasn't married to him very long. Tried again towards the end of my 20s. I tried and it lasted 18 months. It turns out he was just a shyster. So he stole and he took identities from people. And he was just he stole property. He was just, he was not in it for honest reasons. And I meet my 4th husband. And I'm like, okay, this is the one. And once again, I did not put a lot of time and effort in getting to know the person, but he seemed like he had all the right ingredients and everything looked way better and he acted way better and everything was much more pleasant. So I was like, this one is definitely the one who's going to work. And I want to have a normal life where I can be married and have children and have a normal existence. And I wanted to get out of the insanity I had been living in. And I just wanted to settle down and be normal. So I got married, I had 2 kids, and I did everything in my power to do that. And I made huge progress. I went to landmark education for 7 years. For those of you who know what that is, I studied communication. I got into the leadership program, taking the bull by the horns, and I was really understanding my talents, and I was starting to coach people, and I was getting really well. I was getting better, but the problem was the whole time I'm still drinking. That's the problem. Why was I drinking still? The 3 kids were now older, but they were fighting their dad to come live with me, and he was still saying no. And then the older they got, the more angry they got at their father for not letting them have a relationship with their mother and not letting them live with me. So they kept saying to him, this is what I want. You're not giving me what I want. And it became like a thing and a fight. And all 3 kids individually went through that. And then they all 3 eventually moved in with me. But I didn't have them until they were late teens. During that time, I had the 2 other smaller children, and then realized within the first few months I was pregnant, and I was happy because I was like starting over with, I thought was going to be a great relationship. I was with him for 7 years, and it just got really intense because our lifestyles once again were very different. We were just not on the same page about a lot of things. Now, the things we are on the same page about is what kept me there. The way we talked to each other and the fighting and the way that we saw life was so different. He had a different filter than I did, and we were not on the same page. And so we kept trying to make it work, but there was no trying. We were just constantly missing each other. There was just we could not make it work no matter what. And I fought so hard because I did not want to break up another family. So I started to think, this is me. I mean, I'm super flawed. Obviously, I have a major problem where I can't pick men. I am a reject of life. Everything has happened to me. I don't know why, but it did. And at the time, I was trying to learn about how to self-create, how to take responsibility for my actions. So I was just in the throes of learning about that. And I was trying to figure it out and understand how a person like me, who's super victimized, have some responsibility in any of it. I just felt like that's impossible. So it was like really, really hard for me to get a grip on that and to understand my part that I played and why I chose it. So I was in the beginning stages of learning that. During this time, I'm still drinking. I would go through phases, and my favorite was Coke of all kinds. One day I grabbed and I didn't follow my own rule book, which tells me always to get, that's $20 and up. Don't spend less than 20 because you might not get good quality and it could be bad. I would do these detoxes every now and then so I can drink more like most addicts and addicts do. So I would stop drinking, do a big detox program really quick, drink 3 bottles of milk thistle, try to heal my liver, blah, 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 clean for like a week or 2, and then boom, hit it again because I knew when I was hitting my max because I would get sluggish and I was starting to want to black out, and I knew that I needed to detox. So that's as serious as I took it. I didn't take it more serious than that. When I saw myself in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself at all. I also knew I was grateful to be alive. I also knew it was the beginning of a new life. I didn't know what, but I knew that it wasn't going to include, and I didn't need to go to any AA, AAA, whatever meetings. I just needed to look at myself in the mirror and say, you're done, because you're going to die if you don't stop. And that is what stopped me, is I almost died. Fast forward, years go by. I crawled out of that situation. I crawled out of the marriage, crawled out of my health crises, and I met my current husband. Years later, I met my husband when I divorced my 4th husband, but it still took me more years of healing, because when he took me to the doctor was concerned on every level because my adrenal system was shot. My hormone system was non-existent. I had toxicity in the blood. I had an autoimmune disease waiting to happen. I was organ failure. I had heavy metals in my blood. I was extremely, extremely sick. That's how my husband met me. So could you imagine, you meet a woman who's in this condition, even though she looks like she's fighting for her life and she's still okay in some ways, but you could tell that she's not doing that great. You don't really know what's going on. And she has 5 children on top of that. And because he was, and he still is, a psychic, medium, shaman, he understood how to see through all of it. And he understood who was in there fighting to get out. And he saw something in me that no one has seen except for myself. He saw the same person that I had always known was there. And so he said, we got to heal you first. And it took me 5 or 6 years straight of deep, deep detoxing of the body and rejuvenation, cellular building, organ rejuvenation, foods, drinks, supplements, shakes, exercise, routines, everything, until I started to get my body back. There's always a rock you haven't turned over. There always is a road you haven't tried. And you will eventually kill yourself if you are taking poisons, chemicals that are not meant to heal you, but to destroy you. You will eventually die. You don't have a choice because your body is not built to process those things. Keep it very simple. Keep your life very simple. Take care of yourself in the most basic way, because honestly, if you could do that, you could go as high as you want to go in your life and you can fly. But you have to take care of your basic human self first. You have to honor yourself, honor your life. So hopefully this helps somebody, and I appreciate the time.